Thank you, Wayne, for the introduction. Welcome, everybody, to this segment of the InsurTech Connect Asia 2021. My name is Jonas, heading F10 here in Singapore. And at F10, our mission is to unite tech startups with big business to shape the future of banking and insurance. The topic we discussed today, as you already know, is the new world of insurance, and specifically we'll be talking about ecosystems. I'm really honored and joined by 4 awesome panelists today. Although they represent different companies, they have certainly one thing in common, and this is their involvement in and passion for ecosystems. So just let's hear from them quickly who they are and which company they represent. Melissa, I hand it over to you.
Sure, thanks, Jonas. Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for Bolttech. Bolttech is an insurtech company. What we do is we provide technology that brings together insurance providers, distribution partners, and customers in order to transform the way insurance is bought and sold. My background is actually not in insurance, it's actually in digital banking, and I've spent over 10 years in companies like DBS and Standard Chartered, really building and creating ecosystems that put customers at the center of business. Really happy to be with you all today and look forward to the panel. Thanks.
Thanks, Melissa. Over to you, Walter.
Hi, I'm Walter. I'm with Singlife, or Aviva Singlife as we're now called. So Singlife started as a startup insurance company in Singapore, and our job in the beginning of our time was to digitize and to bring insurance into the new future. We took a view at the beginning that in order to be successful, we had to go full stack rather than to be a piece of the ecosystem. So we are fully licensed by the regulator. We built our own tech, have our own distribution, and do everything else that an insurance company would ordinarily do, but with far fewer people. Our job has been to innovate through the cycle, to break down some of the boundaries between financial services, so the overlap between insurance, asset management, banking, and advice can all be brought together under one roof. Very excited to be here.
Thank you, Walter. George, how about you?
Thanks, Jonas. Very nice to be here this morning. I'm George. I'm heading in commercial at ZA Tech. ZA Tech is a very interesting entity. We were born on the DNA of the Zhongang Insurance in China, and we've expanded into international markets based on a technology. Ecosystems is very near and dear to us because we work with many internet ecosystems across Asia and now in Europe as well. We partner with insurers on one side. We have a technology that enables digital insurance. On the other side, we work with the digital ecosystems like ride sharing, e-commerce, and many others. So really looking forward to our conversation today. I think it's really great to see such an awesome panel come together.
Thank you, George. Great. Jonathan, floor is yours.
Thank you, Jonas. Jonathan Rake, I'm the CEO of Swiss Re Corporate Solutions in Asia Pacific. Corporate Solutions is our primary commercial insurance arm, where I've spent the bulk of my career in the last 13 years in Asia. Thank you. Looking forward to the discussion as well.
Thank you, Jonathan. Great. So to start off this discussion today, I'd like to kick this off with a definition of ecosystems from a recent report by Accenture, where an ecosystem is a network of players from either within or outside the industry who work together to define, build, execute, and market creating customer and consumer solutions. The value of successful ecosystem is greater than the combined value each of the players would be able to contribute or leverage on its own. I did like that theoretical definition, but I would really like to put that now in practice and hear from our panelists. What does an insurance ecosystem mean to you and your company, and who are the key players in your ecosystems? And I think I just kick it off again with Melissa.
Yeah, sure. Look, Bolttech, ecosystems are what I think are the heart of what Bolttech is all about. We are an insurance exchange platform that is the connectivity layer between buyers and sellers of insurance. So what we do is we actually kind of orchestrate and connect over 150 different insurance companies on our platform, and across US, Asia, and Europe. We have about $5 billion premium flowing through the exchange. So what does that mean? It means that what we provide is, the ability to match traditional insurers to reach more distribution channels. And what we do is we also work with affinity partners who want to start selling insurance, or some people have already started, selling insurance, but are not doing it effectively. And that could range from, any industry like telcos, e-commerce, super apps, banks, OTAs. Really, it's very much about the use case and ensuring that, we build for the context of our partners' customers. So as you can see, we are right at the heart of what it is to be an insurance ecosystem. Just sort of maybe to bring it to life a little bit, one of the examples that is, I guess, one of our most successful is in the US, we work with Progressive, who is a monoline auto insurer. They sell predominantly auto insurance, but they are also the largest distributor of other products like home and contents. And they do that through our connectivity layer, our platform, and being able to access third-party underwriters. And they do that all without actually taking risk on their balance sheet. And in doing so, and other insurers as well, within our ecosystem, they're able to do things like sort of maximize the cost per acquisition of a customer, and be able to really increase customer lifetime value for their customers. So some of the numbers that we're seeing is kind of increase of 20% in customer lifetime value. And another really nice proof point is, of the ecosystem kind of working and being more than the sum of the parts of the players, is that the actual underwriter who enables third-party policies to be sold on their platform sells 1.6 times more of their own product in doing so. So it's really sort of giving benefit to themselves. So thanks, Jonas.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. So really, the ecosystem is really core of what you do. Yes. At Bolttech. Great to hear. So I want to hear from Jonathan, how are you seeing ecosystems, and what role does Swiss Re play in it, and what kind of players are you having in your ecosystem?
Thanks, Jonas. Well, I think if you start with your definition, and then just picking up on some of Melissa's points. So clearly, listening to Melissa, you see there's a big digitalization component to this, and how it's sort of changing the industries of our customers, and obviously addressing inefficiencies in the markets. So with the emergence of these ecosystems, within these customer industries, it's making structured data more accessible, obviously allowing us opportunities around then digital enabled and data driven insurance solutions. But I think what's also really important, what's happening is the risk landscape changes with these new ecosystems. So switching sort of back to the core part of the question, why I make that last point is, I guess the way we see it from Swiss Re, the way I see it is, there's really opportunity across kind of three primary fronts. The first is, the ecosystem is offering us access to customers through different channels. It definitely offers us opportunities to innovate, to go beyond traditional insurance solutions. And I think the third piece, which is very important for us, is it kind of allows us to live by what we say, which is, Swiss Re working towards making the world more resilient. And I think I'll just sort of make a couple of comments on the last point and give an example. So for us, not only making the world more resilient, but also being resilient in ecosystems is critical to be able to sustain yourself in them. And so the way we really look at this is really being true to our core strengths. If you really understand how you differentiate in the role that you play, how you can differentiate against peers in that ecosystem, you've got a better chance of being sustainable and effectively not being commoditized and replaced. So with that in mind, we think of ourselves obviously having a very central role in the risk-taking community, but not just the risk-taking, also, risk services, risk insights, risk solutions. And so with that in mind, we have a real opportunity as ecosystems are created. We don't necessarily have to be the orchestrator. We heard Melissa talking about being the platform and the orchestrator. We'll look at that ecosystem and think, how can we identify the real risks that are being created by these new ecosystems and work on making not only the customers, but also the participants in that ecosystem more resilient. And therein lies the opportunity to kind of innovate. And one practical example of this we've worked with, which is in the region, we worked with Hitachi, obviously a very large Japanese company. They've got a new software which basically predicts machine failure through a variety of parameters and sensors, etc. And obviously this is super critical because it allows companies to take their machines offline before they break down, and huge productivity and efficiency. But we identified working with them that there's a real algorithmic risk in there. There's always a risk that the prediction will be wrong. And so what we're sort of working with them and piloting within an ecosystem, so we have a pilot customer on the other side, so there's the ecosystem is to help cover that, to cover that risk through sort of warranty product on the event of the algorithm being wrong, or the system prediction being false. And so we really need to understand that data deeply. We need to have our own risk models around that, but obviously that helps make it a more kind of end-to-end sounder solution. And so, the summary there from our perspective is we don't always have to look at being the orchestrator. It's about understanding where we can play a role to our core strengths and helping these ecosystems be more resilient. And I'll pause there and come back if you want any more details on that later.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan. I think that's really insightful and great to hear your experience and life cases that you're really running and being part of the ecosystem. That's great. So now I think I go on, as we've heard now from Melissa and Jonathan about how they see ecosystems. I'm very curious about Walter and George. Which ecosystems have you formed or joined? And what role do you play in it? And I would love to actually hear also about maybe some successes, but also challenges that you see facing by engaging, forming, joining an ecosystem. I hand it over to you, Walter, first.
Yeah, sure. So we've taken a view on ecosystems in two ways. One, and the dominant way, is to think about an ecosystem is what is the ecosystem that we're creating for our end customer? And what are the products and services within that ecosystem that optimize their experience of financial services, right? So that ecosystem then means how do we take products, and our version of products is our own products. How do we build those into that ecosystem so that we can get the utility across the various components of financial need, whether it be cash management or asset management or insurance, all within that core space. We have a product called Manage, Grow, and Protect to those particular use cases. So everything we do around our ecosystem is then how do we optimize the customer ecosystem with the use of technology. So when we built, as an insurance company, had the luxury of being able to build from scratch. We decided that it was the ecosystem of tech has to be componentized in its delivery. So there's some things that we build ourselves, mainly the central core of connectivity between the core systems. And there's a lot of tech that we then plug in based on the specific use cases, whether it's a back-end infrastructure from a core administration system and we run multiple cores because of use, or if it's a front-end integration into a mobile app or a country-specific distribution platform, but also the tech components that fit into it. So whether it's KYC tech or compliance tech or underwriting tech, all of these things can fit in as third-party products, tech-based, which then improve the overall customer experience of how they experience the overall connectivity of products. So if any of you are lucky enough to be Singlife customers, you would have seen through the app experience of how slick it can be. We are trying to get it even more and more and more slick all the time, but trying to have this componentry of ecosystem behind. Finally, in building that tech ecosystem, we took a couple of rules at the beginning, was to say when we added or subtracted added a piece of tech to what we do, we made it very clear on our organization that it was as important to be able to take the tech out as it is to put it in. Yeah, because technology is evolving so fast and we've kind of changed, as an example, just the KYC tech has gone through 5 years of evolution, right? And so what we've been able to do is just unplug the old one and plug in a new one quite quickly because of the architecture of the tech infrastructure. That's how we've seen how the ecosystem's built.
Great, thank you so much, Walter. I think also very much in line with what we do at F10 to bringing in these tech startups and combining them with incumbents or big players like you. I think, yes, very much aligned on that one. How about George? How do you see it?
So for us, the ecosystem view is that we look at it as a universe of all the things that are surrounding our digital partners. And when I say digital partners, we have a JV with Grab, for example, on the insurance front. We have a JV with OVO, which is a big payments unicorn in Indonesia. And when we look at the ecosystem, we look at it through that lens, through the lens of the universe that surrounds that digital partner. So customers, technology, and kind of all the things that are inclusive in that. So when we think about the ecosystem in that respect, basically what it leads us to is we think about all the enabling pieces that need to happen in order for that ecosystem to embrace insurance. And it can be done in multiple different ways, right? So embedded insurance is something that became a bit of a big trend over the last 2 years or so, where things got embedded within this ecosystems, within this universes of clusters of digital customers. So where you talk about the ecosystem of ride sharing or ecosystem of payments or ecosystem of e-commerce, each one of them have embraced insurance in slightly different ways, but still kind of the fundamentals were more or less the same. So that really allowed them to take advantage of the insurance. And we think that there is going to be a very interesting dynamic playing out where this ecosystem will go through this embedded nature to probably more something like online to offline combination. The opportunity is definitely there to kind of bring insurance closer to those ecosystems. I think right now we're still in the early days of that. But what we see is kind of our learnings based on our experience, both in China and now in the international markets, is that there are certain challenges associated with this ecosystem. First of all, the big challenge is that insurance is such a new concept that all these ecosystems are learning of how do you actually apply insurance not in a by the way, but it's in a kind of something that's very value adding and integrated within their core propositions. And the second challenge is that once they realize the power of insurance, how do you maintain this collaboration and the partnership, and rather than them feeling that they should probably build it themselves. So that kind of a partnership collaboration approach is still evolving. And what we found is that once we partner with the ecosystems, creating JVs, creating some sort of like a more shared partnership model actually works out to be a lot better than just kind of initially starting off by providing a piece and then being displaced a year later when a choice or kind of direction changes. So those are some of the challenges and opportunities I think that we're seeing in this ecosystem space.
Great, thank you, George. So very much still an evolving scene here, the ecosystems. I think we're very much at the start. So that leads us actually to the next question. And I think now in the audience that is listening today and thinking, gosh, I'm missing out. How can I join an insurance ecosystem? How can I become part of an ecosystem or maybe even form one by myself? Another question to the panelists, how would you advise maybe startups, incumbents, third-party providers on becoming an attractive ecosystem partner and joining or forming an ecosystem? And I hand it over again to Melissa for that question.
Thanks. Yeah, so I was having a think about this, and obviously it's very much taken from the context of who and what you play in the ecosystem. So maybe for incumbents, one of the things that I thought was extremely important is just getting started. So for example, traditional insurers that traditionally feel like they kind of have to build everything, that they have to have the control over risk, their own balance sheets. How is it that they just get started, right? And actually find a use case together with an ecosystem partner, create a proof of concept or a minimum viable product, get it out to market, and test and learn with the ecosystem partner. And in doing so, you'll be able to learn from doing so, and then getting, slowly building up the outcomes of that. I think the other piece, and I just want to sort of take one of the points that that Walter was saying around building technology right. I think this is a really critical part, and one item that we feel is critical to the success of also being an orchestrator of an ecosystem is having the right kind of product and technology talent. So people who've got the mindset of being able to build in modules, almost like Lego blocks. When you're creating a service, you create that service for many, many different types of use cases, so that if it doesn't work, you can always plug it into something else. And having that mindset and having the kind of people, the talent to be able to see the various aspects of the ecosystem, whether it's on the demand side or the supply side, is very critical as well. And then I'll probably make one last point, and this probably is more around, I think, the insurance kind of industry itself. So, what we find is that in talking to players of the ecosystem, that many partners, potential partners, feel quite apprehensive about being next to competition. So I think if you can actually try to, sort out that fear, of being part and parcel of an ecosystem that may sit you side by side with your competition, then I think that you can very easily sort of and more seamlessly get into an ecosystem together with the various players. And usually how we think about that is very much around putting the customer at the center. So what is the right thing for the customer? If you're adding more value for the customer by these two, traditional sort of competitors playing together, then you should feel like you're doing the right thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Melissa. So it's really about modular architecture being key, as well as really embracing partnership, and it's less about competition. Great. So George, how about you? How do you see it? What does it take to become part of an ecosystem?
So for me, there's kind of 3 quick points that I wanted to mention related to that. So first of all, it's about collaboration. I think everybody is recognizing it's not no longer about kind of you doing something and somebody else doing something else. It is really about embracing a collaboration in a much more bigger scale, and recognizing that it is very much about no longer insurance being the central piece. It is very much about this ecosystem being the central piece. Second one is about the speed. So that change of the mindset from the insurance speed to the ecosystem speed, it is a bit like a 10x change. So it really needs to accelerate to say that, okay, we used to take a year to design a product, but now we need to do it within less than a month, if not days. And I think the last piece is all about measuring the right things. I've seen that there is examples where the insurance get too obsessed about the existing metrics, like what is my sales in the first year of doing something, which generally leads them to conclude that this is not working, it's not successful. But if you measure things that, how many products have you launched? Because it is very much about this velocity of experimentation and testing and learning. I think it becomes a lot more relevant and a lot more successful in that sense, where you say, like, we build a velocity of launching new products, testing them, succeeding or failing very, very quickly.
Nice, thank you, George. So collaboration, speed, and measuring the right thing, that's what you would advise ecosystem players to embrace. Thanks a lot. So we've really been covering a bit of past, present, but I would really like to look into the future as well, and pose the question about which insurance ecosystem do you anticipate to flourish the most in Asia, as we are here an Asian forum? Which markets provide kind of the biggest potential, and maybe also where are still gaps that need to be addressed? And maybe I start off here with Walter. You've launched a digital-only insurer when this was still a very novel concept in 2014. So I think people are curious to hear from you, what's the next big thing on the horizon? What What's your opinion?
Yeah, so I think the Singlife story is a neat one because we did this digital positioning and then built out a product capability pretty quickly. But I think if we take it now to the next phase for what we've done as an organization is to try and leapfrog many, many years in our development cycle through the acquisition of or merger with the Aviva business, which we have here. So now Aviva Singlife is a much, much, much bigger business than the Singlife business was, although we were growing incredibly quickly up until that point of time. But the future for us was how do we take 20 steps forward instead of just 2 at a time? So the Aviva business gives us depth of product, gives us access to quality advice, and it gives us access to a very large customer base and distribution platform as well. So we take that ecosystem that already exists in an insurance way and add our particular secret sauce around digital engagement, digital innovation, and bring some of those products to a much bigger base. That gives us access to compete or punch way beyond our original Singlife weight and be a massive contender. So we've done really well in that regard. Early stages since the transaction, but the future looks very bright.
Great, thank you so much, Walter, and giving us a bit of insights about Singlife and Aviva and where you're going. Jonathan, how about you? Are you sharing some strategic insights that everyone is looking for?
Yeah, I think rather than sort of talking about what Swiss Re is doing today, I might go to your question around what do you see, which markets and how are things developing. I think because we'll all be participating in these in some way or another, some of these with different focuses depending on our business. But I think maybe I'll give you sort of 3 areas. Firstly, the whole e-commerce space. I think that still has a long runway. You heard George talking about the sort of online, offline. This is evolving. I mean, ZhongAn was created. It's a huge insurance company created off with relatively standardized products off the scale of a single kind of marketplace platform, Alibaba, and evolved from there, right? These marketplaces are continuing to grow and expand, and companies and participants in the ecosystem will continue to get smarter in terms of identifying opportunities to add value to the end customers. So that's got a runway, payments, everything that goes with that. I think the medical space, digital medical, healthcare, clearly in this region as well. A lot going on in that space. If you just think about healthcare insurers working with obviously healthcare delivery solutions, and you start going into obviously the digital medical space, but wellness, wearables, holistic, personalized medical. There's a lot in that space, and I think that will continue to innovate, and this region will be very relevant. And then I think just more broadly on the manufacturing side, there's a lot going. Obviously, manufacturing evolving. You've got the growing economies, but radically changing tech in a lot of these companies. And so, I used an example earlier. There'll be many of these examples where these companies' business models are changing as they digitalize and as they come up with new tech, which creates new opportunities to access their customers and provide solutions around that. So maybe doesn't get as much attention as some of the bigger themes, but I think you'll see that evolving quite rapidly over time. So that's a bit about the sort of near term. I think in terms of the markets question, look, I think Asia is very well positioned because if you've got large populations with high digital adoption and innovation and customer needs that haven't been fulfilled or models that haven't been, that have gaps. That's kind of a strong recipe for growing ecosystems. When you fuel that with economic growth and the ability to spend and infrastructure build, it's a pretty powerful combination. So obviously, we would talk about the very large, countries of China and India in this context, but all across Asia, there's many countries that tick those boxes, and so it's an ideal breeding ground for ecosystems in my view, and a lot of innovation I think will come in this space going forward.
Great, thank you so much, Jonathan. So really, e-commerce, digital, medical, healthcare, and manufacturing, the kind of the key areas that you.
And you may have a different 3, but that's the 3. I think there's a lot.
Thank you so much to all the panelists. I think we are very much on time, very swift in that way. Appreciate everyone here, and if people want to get in touch with you, I think the platform provides various ways. But that's it from this panel. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.